I am truly honored to be here, and as I said, it's just an absolute honor and a pleasure to see all of you that took the time to come out and just allow me to share some thoughts with you, and then to hear some of the things that are on your mind and your concerns, because I really believe that one of the critical things that we really have to establish in the United States of America is a sense of people that go and they are representatives of you. They are the people that go and understand your voice and your concerns, and not the voice and the concerns of their own self-interest or the special interest. Now, as Corey brought out, one of the things that's so important to me, one of the things that enables me to stand here today is I had two great parents that stressed education for me. You know, if you go back to my inner city neighborhood, you can see some things that are pretty shocking. But the fact that they stressed upon me a discipline, they stressed upon me a commitment to excellence. And that enables me to stand here having a bachelor's degree and two master's degrees. And the reason why I had to get two master's degrees is because if you marry a woman with an MBA and a PhD, she's not going to talk to you with just a bachelor's degree. But that's the brilliance of my wife, Angela. And that's also the commitment to excellence that we want to share with our two daughters, Aubrey and Austin. You know, Aubrey is about to be a senior in high school, and she's starting to think about where she's going on to college. And Austin is going into the 8th grade, and the next thing you know, she's going to be in high school, which are those very critical and formative years that will determine what your path is for the rest of your life. So with that being said, I think it's so important that we talk about something that is critical to who we are in the United States of America. How do we make sure that we educate our future generations? How do we make sure that we prepare them for the future and the legacy of this great constitutional republic? Because one of the things that I am so proud about my grandparents and my parents, they prepared me and enabled me to have better than what they had. And if you understand two parents that were brought up in the deep south of Georgia, it is an absolute miracle. It is an absolute testimony to their vision and their belief that enables me to stand here today. And I think that is what we owe to our children and to our grandchildren, so that this great United States of America will continue on for another 235 years. So, as always, I want to make this invite because I know that there's spies out there, and people talk about having these folks called trackers that are going to follow you around. And I invite them to come right down here in front. Because what I have to say, I'm not ashamed of saying. So that if you're going to publish something later on a blog or what have you, at least have the courage to sit here in front of me and look at me eye to eye. And don't be cowardly. Because I am talking about principles that are the foundational basis of this country. And if anyone believes that what I'm talking about makes me a radical, well, once upon a time the British called the founding fathers radicals. Today we call them patriots. So, this is not going to be about me standing up here and proselytizing for too long. But there are some very critical points that I want to bring out for each and every one of you, because I think a lot of people, this is also part of education. It's about me doing some research and sharing some things with you that I've learned. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is this thing called the Department of Education. You see, back in 1979, we had what was called the Health, Education, and Welfare. But then, in that year, we separated it out. We created the Human Health Services, and then the Department of Education. We made it its own cabinet position. And what is interesting enough is when you go back and you look at the 1980 status of the Department of Education, it had 450 employees. And it had a budget in 2007 dollars of $13.1 billion. Now, 2011 request from the Department of Education is now $77.8 billion. And that agency, which started out as 450, is now 4,800 people. But the interesting thing is that when I did the research, from 1973 to 2004, federal spending on education quadrupled. But the math scores on the National Assessment of the Education Progress Test rose for American 17-year-olds only by 1%. And in reading, it stayed flatlined. over a 21-year period. In Washington, D.C., where you have the nation's highest per student expenditure of $15,511 in 2007, they ranked dead last in achievement. Here in the state of Florida, in Palm Beach, 2007, this is the latest figures, we spent per child $12,695. And that ranks Palm Beach as 11th out of the 67 counties in the state of Florida for expenditure per student. In Broward County, $11,166, 20th out of 67. But yet today in the Miami Herald, and Amy, I'm glad to see you here. Thanks for making the drive up. But in the Miami Herald today, in the editorial section, this was the title: Florida earns an F for accountability. Because FCAT scores for the 4th, 5th, and 9th grades. And in Broward County, it will show a 78% of elementary schools in Broward had a decline. That's the status of what's happening in the United States of America with our education system. We are not preparing our young people to get out and be competitive. We're not preparing them to be effective members of this society. And I know, I spent the year teaching at Deerfield Beach High School back in 2004 to 2005. And the reason why I left, because I got a little bit better job offer to teach Afghan soldiers for 2.5 years over at Kabul Military Training Center and also Kandahar, Afghanistan. A little bit more hazardous duty teaching, if you want to ask me. But the thing was this: what I saw in my year at Deerfield Beach High School was absolutely appalling. Because what I saw was we were not teaching our kids the effective skills to be competitive in this world. What we were doing, we were teaching a test. And as a history teacher and a government teacher, there were times when I was told, those students need to leave your class and go out and prepare for the FCAT. We have to understand that every single thing that we are trying to train our children with, all of these skills, all of these pieces of education are critical. But now we've got to the point where we're not teaching critical thinking skills. We're teaching rote memorization of a test. We're teaching means by which you can outthink a test. And what the sad thing is, a lot of these young men and women at the age of 16, they fail this thing called the FCAT. They believe that they don't have a future. They don't have anything to do. They don't have any possible outlet. And that creates a problem for us here because a lot of them just give up and they drop out. See, 81% of the DOE's money goes down to the states. But what is interesting was that I did the research and found that Title I monies, the monies that are supposed to go to those most underprivileged school districts and counties, it's not prioritized. You know, one of the richest counties in the United States of America, Fairfax County, Virginia, was receiving those Title I funds. We're not doing a good job of prioritizing. We're not doing a good job of identifying where the problems are. And I think it comes back to one very basic thing. When you look to the north, to Canada. Canada, when you look at the international standards, Canada is exceeding the United States of America. But Canada does not have a centralized Department of Education or Ministry of Education. It is decentralized. See, what I believe we have to do when you start talking about education, okay, are you raising your child to be a liberal? What we have to do with education is very simple. We have got to make education relevant to not just the situation and the times. We've got to make education relevant to the areas in which our children live. Because right now, when you sit down and start talking about algebra, geometry, or many other things, these kids don't understand what's the purpose of it. We've got to have cooperation between our school systems and with the businesses and the private sector to come in and start teaching our young people, why are these things you're learning important? How can you take geometry and all of a sudden bring in a landscape architect and start talking about different things you can use it for? Or bring in road surveyors. And then we start to offer kids internships and apprenticeships. because